This is the disturbing voice of California's most wanted serial killer. Responsible for 45 sexual assaults, 12 murders, and multiple shootings, he was constantly playing catch me if you can with cops.
He put a knife right to my chest.
He would first carefully analyze the victim and then start the horror scene.
The victims would be asleep. They would be in bed. They would be feeling their safest. You're awakened by a flashlight shown in your eyes and a gun pointed at you in the middle of the night.
No matter how hard the police tried to catch this maniac, they could not do it. After 20 years of unsuccessful investigation, the killer thought he would never be found. Or would he, after all?
Disturbing new details about the Golden State Killer.
Man accused of being the Golden State Killer.
An arrest in the case of the Golden State Killer.
It's the 1980s, and burglaries are taking off in California. One ransacker in particular has a habit of breaking into people's homes and rummaging through their stuff. Strangely, he often scatters women's undergarments and snatches low-value items, leaving behind banknotes and more valuable things. He even has a quirky tendency to arrange items in unusual ways.
And worried about their own homes being violated.
I put locks on my door.
The next break could be anywhere.
And still, nobody even knows what he looks like.
Some of the stuff he grabbed included piggy banks, coin collections, blue chip stamps, foreign or old coins, and personal belongings like single earrings, cufflinks, rings, or medallions. But here's the really bizarre part. He also swiped 6 weapons and various types of ammo. And it didn't stop at one house a day. On November 30th, 1974, he went wild with 12 different break-ins. Police believed all this was caused by one man, whom they called Visalia Ransacker. This man was later identified as James DeAngelo. Then, on September 11th, 1975, something that was way more horrific than anything DeAngelo did before happened. Claude Snelling lived over at 532 Whitney Lane, alongside his daughter Beth. Claude encountered something bizarre. He caught a stranger peeping into his teenage daughter Beth's bedroom. He chased after the intruder, but the mysterious figure vanished into the shadowy neighborhood. At about 2 a.m. that day, the Snellings were abruptly roused by eerie sounds. Out in the backyard, a chilling nightmare was unfolding before their eyes. A masked man, shrouded in a ski mask, held Beth at knife point, his threats to silence her with death looming in the air. Through the kitchen window, Claude glimpsed his daughter's figure and raced to her rescue. Startled, the kidnapper swiftly raised his firearm, firing 2 shots in desperation. Claude was struck down, and Beth endured the agonizing blows of the assailant's repeated kicks before he vanished into the night. Within minutes, Claude was dead due to the gunshot wounds. An investigation led the police to uncover that the murder weapon was a stolen Moroku .38 taken by the prowler from another residence just 10 days prior. The Visalia police added extra support to catch the ransacker. They put up a reward of $4,000. They even set up nighttime stakeouts near the houses he had been targeting, but despite their efforts, the ransackings continued. 3 months after the Snelling murder, a Visalia police officer hid in a resident's garage, keeping an eye on a nearby house he thought the ransacker was scoping. Suddenly, he spotted movement in the dim streetlight, and there was the prowler. Without a second thought, the officer sprang into action. With his gun and flashlight in hand, he took off running. He fired a warning shot, causing the suspect to halt and face him. The prowler, trembling, pulled off his ski mask, concealing one hand over his face while the other remained hidden in his jacket pocket. "Please don't hurt me," the man whimpered, his voice sounding strangely juvenile and effeminate, as the officer later described. "Look, my hands are up." In a shocking turn of events, the prowler suddenly withdrew his hand from his pocket and unleashed the hidden firearm. The bullet struck the officer's flashlight, burying itself in the battery. The impact sent the officer toppling backward. Amid the chaos, the ransacker vaulted over a fence, disappearing into the night, just as he had done so many times before. After that, in 1976, DeAngelo relocated to Sacramento, and that's when things took a dark turn. His criminal activities shifted from break-ins to sexual assaults. Now known as the East Area Assaulter, he had a chilling method. Before committing his crimes, he'd make phone calls to the victims to figure out their daily routines.
Call, and then there would be no one on the other end of the phone. And I just knew it was him. I just knew it was him.
Many victims noticed someone snooping around their homes before the attacks, and some had even dealt with break-ins. The police suspected that the culprit would carefully scope out the neighborhood, peering through windows and skulking in yards, before choosing a home to strike. They believed he would sometimes sneak into the homes of his future victims to unlock windows, stash firearms, and hide ligatures for future use. He would also be seen scouring for jewelry, IDs, and cash. He'd then subject the residents to torment and, in some cases, murder. Typically, victims awoke to a flashlight in their faces and a gun pointed at them. At first, he mainly went after women who were alone at home or with their children, but over time, he began to favor targeting couples. The reason for this change is believed to be a result of media reports saying he was only targeting women who were alone in the house. DeAngelo found this amazing, and subsequently, he took it as a challenge. His typical approach involved gaining entry through a window or sliding glass door. Armed with a flashlight and a handgun, he would wake the unsuspecting residents from their slumber. With threats looming, he'd plunge them into terror. Shoelaces, sometimes found on the spot and other times brought with him, were used to bind the victims. Following this, they'd be blindfolded and silenced with torn towel strips. In a chilling ritual, he would compel the female victim to first secure her male companion before her own restraints were applied. The tightness of these bindings left the victim's hands numb for hours after their eventual release. The ordeal continued with a cruel separation of the couple. The female victim was moved to the living room, where she suffered repeated acts of violation, one after another. DeAngelo would often spend hours inside the house, going through closets and drawers, having a meal from the kitchen, sipping on beer, subjecting the women to further trauma, or delivering additional threats. On many occasions, the victims would assume he had exited the premises, only for him to surprise them by reappearing as if he jumped from the darkness. His routine involved stealing various items, which ranged from personal belongings and low-value items to the occasional cash or firearms. After this, he would silently vanish, leaving his victims in a state of uncertainty regarding his departure. It was believed that he made his getaway on foot, navigating through a maze of yards and then employing a bicycle to reach his destination, whether it was his home or a vehicle. His escape route often traversed parks, schoolyards, creek beds, and open spaces, allowing him to evade the prying eyes of the street. After a 3-month pause, he made a move to nearby San Joaquin County in September. After that, he came back to Sacramento for the next 10 attacks. During the summer of 1978, the assaulter struck 5 times in Stanislaus and Yolo counties before vanishing once more for 3 months. Then, in October, the attacks shifted primarily to Contra Costa County and continued until July 1979. Not long after the July 5, 1979 last sexual assault, DeAngelo headed down to Southern California and started murdering folks. His first killing spree happened in Santa Barbara County in October. From now on, he was known as the Night Stalker. Around that time, there was a young couple in Sacramento, Brian Keith Maggiore, a military policeman stationed at Mather Air Force Base, and his wife, Katie Lee Maggiore. They went out for a walk with their dog near Rancho Cordova. This area had seen 5 attacks by the East Area Rapist. It's a chilling night to remember. But on this night, something horrifying happened. They got into a confrontation in the street and tried to escape, but they were chased down. Tragically, they were shot and lost their lives. Investigators started to believe that maybe the East Area Rapist was responsible for this brutal act. They found a connection in location to the other attack sites, and a shoelace was discovered nearby. Later, after 20 years, the FBI said that it was confident to say that the crime was committed by DeAngelo. On the night of October 1, 1979, in the quiet neighborhood of Queen Anne Lane in Goleta, a town not far from Santa Barbara, a woman, trembling with fear, found herself lying on her living room floor. Her wrists were tightly bound behind her back, and her ankles were secured. A pair of tennis shorts had been used as a blindfold, concealing her vision. The eerie silence was disrupted by the sound of the intruder rummaging in the kitchen. It was 2:20 a.m. "I'll kill him, I'll kill him, I'll kill him," he repeated, as if psyching himself up for a sports challenge, according to the investigator. The woman somehow managed to free her feet from the restraints and made a frantic escape through the front door. Amid the chaos, her live-in boyfriend, who had been bound in the bedroom, seized an opportunity to sneak into the backyard, where he rolled behind an orange tree. He narrowly avoided the intruder's flashlight beam, which scanned the area in search of him. A quick-thinking witness caught a glimpse of the suspect as he fled the scene. A slender man sporting a Pendleton shirt, pedaling away furiously on a stolen silver Nishiki 10-speed. Following that failed assault, none of his victims would survive to tell their tale. Fast forward nearly 3 months to December 30th, just half a mile south of the location of the October attack. On that fateful morning, Santa Barbara Sheriff's detectives were summoned to Dr. Robert Offerman's office. A distressed woman awaited them outside, her tears painting a somber prelude. "There are 2 people dead inside," she said with tears. Inside the confines of the bedroom, a grim scene unfolded. Dr. Robert Offerman, a 44-year-old osteopath, knelt on the floor. In his left hand, he clutched a length of white 3-strand nylon cord. His girlfriend, the 35-year-old psychologist Deborah Alexandria Manning, was sprawled on the right side of a waterbed, her vulnerability exposed as she lay there nude and bound. This time, it seemed the killer's meticulous plan had hit a snag. Offerman had somehow managed to break free from his restraints, casting a chilling shadow of doubt. It raised the eerie possibility that the killer might have ordered Manning to secure Offerman, and she, in a desperate act of defiance, had bound him loosely on purpose. As the detectives combed through the crime scene, they carefully maneuvered around a turkey carcass swathed in cellophane, carelessly abandoned on the patio. Before the heartless killer carried out his sinister act, putting bullets through the hearts and the backs of his unsuspecting victims, he had indulged in Offerman's remaining Christmas feast. The forensic experts meticulously documented what seemed to be the intruder's signatures: the nylon twine, the telltale pry marks on doors and windows, and the distinctive tennis shoe imprints. All these elements matched the distinctive pattern of a man who had garnered notoriety as the East Area Assaulter. This stealthy cat burglar had cast a long shadow over Sacramento and Contra Costa counties, embarking on his reign of terror in 1976 and only ending after a foiled attack on July 6, 1979. To isolate his victims, he often infiltrated their homes when they were vacant. Inside, he'd acquaint himself with the layout, scrutinize family photographs, and memorize names. Before and after the attacks, victims were subjected to unsettling, anonymous phone calls. He'd skillfully sabotage porch lights and quietly unlock windows. The ammo was removed from firearms, rendering them useless. Shoelaces or ropes were discreetly hidden under cushions to serve as ligatures. These cunning tactics provided him with a chilling upper hand because when startled from a deep sleep by the piercing flashlight and the presence of a ski-masked stranger, you were an unfamiliar face to him, but he was all too familiar with you. 3 months later, on March 13, 1980, after the Goleta murders, the lifeless bodies of 33-year-old Charlene Smith and 43-year-old Lyman Smith were discovered in their home. Tragically, Charlene had also suffered a horrific assault. The weapon of choice, a log from the woodpile by the house, was used to brutally kill them. Both victims were found with their wrists and ankles bound by drapery cord. What made this case even more chilling was the unusual Chinese knot known as the diamond knot, tightly securing Charlene's wrists. A knot that had been connected to the East Area Assaulter attacks, with at least one confirmed public case sharing this peculiar detail. Thus, the unknown assailant earned a chilling nickname, the Diamond Knot Killer. Then, on August 19th, 24-year-old Keith Eli Harrington and his 27-year-old wife Patrice were also found dead in their home on Cockleshell Drive. Patrice was also sexually assaulted before she was brutally killed. While there were clear signs of the Harringtons' wrists and ankles being tied up, there were no murder weapons or ligatures discovered at the scene. Keith's brother Bruce later made a substantial contribution, investing almost $2 million to endorse California Proposition 69. This proposal paved the way for the collection of DNA from all felons and select other criminals in California. On February 6th, 28-year-old Manuela Whithun met a tragic end in her Irvine residence. Signs pointed to her being tied up before a brutal attack, but strangely, no murder weapon or bindings were discovered. Her husband was away, receiving medical care, leaving her alone during the assault. Adding to the intrigue, the killer left Whithun's television in the backyard, as if trying to make the crime look like a failed robbery. The 10th and 11th victims of the infamous original Night Stalker were Sherry Domingo and Gregory Sanchez. This gruesome incident occurred in Domingo's temporary residence on Toltec Way in Goleta, just a few blocks south of Robert Offerman's condominium. The house was not her own. It belonged to a relative and was listed for sale. The intruder gained access through a small bathroom window. Sanchez, who was not bound, suffered a gunshot wound to the cheek before meeting a gruesome end, bludgeoned to death with a garden tool. Some think that Sanchez might have figured out he was facing the person behind the Offerman Manning murders and decided to confront the killer instead of being tied up. Once again, there was silence from the neighbors after the gunshot. Sanchez's head was concealed with clothes from the closet. Domingo suffered a horrifying assault, with bruises on her wrists and ankles suggesting she was bound, although the restraints were nowhere to be found. A piece of shipping twine lay near the bed, and unidentifiable fibers were scattered across her body. Investigators suspected the attacker might have been employed as a painter or held a similar job at the Calais Real shopping center. Similarly, on May 4th, 18-year-old Janelle Lisa Cruz met a tragic end in her Irvine residence. enduring a horrifying ordeal of brutal sexual assault. It's important to note her family was away on vacation in Mexico during this terrible event. Interestingly, a pipe wrench, which Cruz's stepfather had noticed missing, was suspected to be the weapon used in the murder. The chilling similarities were hard to ignore. All the female victims were slender and beautiful, their hands cruelly bound behind their backs. Encircling each single-story home, eerie star-shaped impressions from a pair of size 9 Adidas shoes were etched into the ground. The predator who was once a sexual assaulter had transformed into a ruthless serial killer, and this transformation seemed to amplify his self-control. Murder became his new obsession, surpassing the satisfaction he once derived from rape. There were longer intervals between his heinous acts. The notoriety that he previously reveled in seemed to shift into a desire for obscurity. He meticulously erased any connections between the murders, removing telltale ligatures from the crime scenes. In one instance, he even went so far as to stage a murder to resemble a simple robbery, further complicating the authorities' pursuit of the elusive killer. Before officially connecting the original Night Stalker to the East Area Rapist in 2001, some law enforcement officials, especially those from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, were looking to tie the Goleta cases into the mix. These connections mainly stemmed from similarities in how the crimes were carried out. It's important to note that one of the double murders previously attributed to the original Night Stalker happened in Ventura, approximately 40 miles southeast of Goleta. The rest of the murders took place in Orange County, an additional 90 miles southeast. Fast forward to 2001, and things took an intriguing turn. DNA evidence linked several sexual assault cases in Contra Costa County to the East Area Rapist. These crimes were believed to have been committed by the same perpetrator responsible for the Smith, Harrington, Whithoon, and Cruz murders. A decade later, another breakthrough emerged when DNA evidence pointed to the Golden State Killer as the culprit behind the Domingo Sanchez murders. Subsequently, on June 15, 2016, the FBI shared crime info, new sketches, and a $50,000 reward. They set up a national database to help the police. In December 2017, DeAngelo's hunt began. Detective Paul Holes and FBI lawyer Steve Kramer took his DNA from a sexual assault kit in Ventura County and put it on the GED Match website. They used genetic genealogy on Match, tracking DeAngelo's relatives back to the 1800s and creating 25 family trees. The site found 10 to 20 people with the same distant ancestors as the Golden State Killer. Months of work eliminated suspects with age, gender, and location clues, leaving only DeAngelo. On April 18, 2018, investigators quietly swiped a DNA sample from DeAngelo's car door handle. Later, they snagged another sample from a tissue in his trash. Turns out, both matched the DNA from the Golden State Killer crime scenes. On April 24, 2018, Sacramento County Sheriff's deputies nabbed DeAngelo in his home's side yard. He faced 8 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. Then, on May 10th, the Santa Barbara County District Attorney's Office added 4 more counts of first-degree murder. After his arrest, DeAngelo somewhat confessed, mentioning a mysterious inner personality called Jerry, who apparently compelled him to commit the crimes, which suddenly stopped in 1986. In April 2018, after his arrest, DeAngelo was alone in a police interrogation room. According to detectives, he said to himself, "I didn't have the strength to push him out. He made me. He went with me. It was like in my head, he's a part of me. I didn't want to do those things. I pushed Jerry out and had a happy life. I did all those things. I destroyed all their lives. So now I've got to pay the price." DeAngelo couldn't face charges for the sexual assaults or burglaries due to expired statutes of limitations. However, he got hit with 13 murders and 13 kidnapping charges. On August 21st, 2020, DeAngelo got slammed with a bunch of life sentences and no chance of parole. He then offered an apology to the families of the victims.
"I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm truly sorry to everyone I've hurt. Thank you, Your Honor."
Thank you, sir.
In February 2021, DeAngelo was placed in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran. While he still serves his life sentence there, one question remains. Has DeAngelo confessed to all his sins, or are there more crimes that will never be connected to him? Please subscribe for more videos like this and leave a like to help the channel. Thank you for watching.